The Queen of Granada, by M. Riff. Chapter 26, The Gas Station. In some spots, rainwater had already filled the puddles, and they seemed ready to merge into a bigger flood. The area around the gas station was completely deserted. In one corner, there was a car that resembled a Lada from a distance. Oddly, it was painted olive green, the same shade as the nearby plantations. Rita had seen a few cars of this brand in Denmark, but they had all been red. She'd also heard that most Lada owners were associated with a certain political ideology, and that was why they drove a car from the Soviet Union. Every time she spotted a Lada on the street, she thought of the ongoing feud between the politicians from the East and the West that was mentioned in the news every single day. Their disputes appeared as fights between two gangs of boys in the schoolyard, who threatened each other with their sharp pens. However, the politicians threatened each other with missiles, carrying nuclear warheads instead of pens. Her free-thinking aunt had told her that less intelligent people join an ideology, while the intelligent people develop their own ideas, because they have enough brain power to see the matter from both sides and make their own conclusions. A bit farther away, there were two more parked cars. One was a VW bus, and the other, parked right in front of it, a Land Rover. A guy had pulled a plastic bag over his head and was struggling with something at the Land Rover's bumper. He had a long, curved rod, probably a winch, in his hand. It seemed he was having trouble starting the engine and was attempting to do it manually. But the engine stubbornly refused to cooperate. After a few strenuous attempts, he had to face reality and give up. He sat on the bumper, next to the winch, crossed his arms in front of his chest, and stared in despair at the pouring rain. Rita watched from a distance, having a pretty good idea of the problem at hand and how the man could possibly solve it. The engine clearly ran on diesel, and due to the rainy weather, water had seeped into the fuel tank. It was evident that the water had settled at the bottom of the tank while the diesel floated on top. So, every time he turned the crankshaft with the winch, he was essentially pulling more water into the engine. Given the persistent rain, his problem would only worsen, leaving him with just one practical solution. He needed to pour a bottle of alcohol into the tank to mix the water and diesel together. This mixture could then enter the engine and burn off. Rita was aware that many truck drivers were familiar with this trick, but it wasn't common knowledge among regular drivers. Suddenly, it seemed like the guy remembered this solution. He quickly got up and hurried over to the driver's side of the car, which was oddly on the right side, likely because it was an English car. He located a bottle, went to the fuel tank cap and removed it. Before tipping the bottle's contents into the tank, he took a proper swig himself. Returning to the winch, still lodged in the engine, he began turning it with renewed determination. This time, he was fully committed, repeatedly spinning the crank around. Then, with a deafening bang, the engine sprang to life. It emitted a mix of smoke and steam that billowed into the air like a dark cloud above the car. The guy removed the crank, settled into the driver's seat, and pressed his foot on the accelerator, causing the engine to roar like an old steam locomotive. Each time he lifted his foot from the pedal, the engine threatened to stall. Initially, it ran unevenly, with occasional hiccups. But gradually it warmed up and began to spin as smoothly as a sewing machine.